It used to be that when you learned Torah and you wanted to learn halachot, so let's say you would come across one of the laws of Shabbat in the Torah. So you would then want to know, so practically, what am I allowed to do and not allowed to do? So you would then go to the Mishnah and try to figure out what am I allowed to do, what am I not allowed to do, based on what the Mishnah says. The Mishnah, but you can't finish with the Mishnah. So then you have to go to the Gemara, find the relevant Gemarot that are connected to that one pasuk in the Torah that you're trying to look up. And then what you would have to do after you finish the Talmud is you'd have to go through the different Braito, to the uncompiled Mishnayot, and different things like that. And you might even want to find a Zohar or something like that. And then, of course, you'd have to go to the Rishonim. You're talking about the Rambam, the Rif, the Rosh, the Ran, the Rashba, the Ritva, all the Rabbi Yonatan, all the big rabbis of the Rishonim.
What is the relationship of Mishnah to Halacha?
Very good. Mishnah is part of the process. And the Mishnah will say, carrying on Shabbat inside of an Eruv. I'm just giving an example. Rabbi so-and-so says allowed. Rabbi so-and-so says not allowed. And Rabbi so-and-so says sometimes allowed. Period. And that's what the Mishnah says. The Gemara then goes to explain the different reasons for the three opinions. Then we'll generally choose one opinion. And that's the only... Even you can't get a halachic ruling from the Mishnah. You'd have to get it from the Talmud. And then through all those rabbis, you'd have to come to the conclusion of halacha on your own. Maran, Rabbi Yosef Karo, did something brilliant. He decided he was going to do all the hard work for us. There was a rabbi right before Rabbi Yosef Karo wrote the Tur Shulchan Aruch. It's the same order of the Shulchan Aruch, a different book. And Rabbi Yosef Karo wrote a commentary. And he, let's say, writes Halacha Siman Aleph, Halacha Aleph. And Maran will write, the first time we find this mitzvah is in the Torah. And then in the Mishnah. And then this is what it says in the Gemara. And this is what the Rambam says. This is what Rashi says. This is what the Ritva says. This is what the Rambam says. And it gives you everything you need to know about this. And then what Bet Yosef did is he wrote a Shulchan Aruch, where he condensed everything and just said, do this, don't do that. Do this, don't do that. So Shulchan Aruch is the final version of his book. But if you want to know what made Rabbi Yosef Karo think the way he thinks, or what were the sources for the halacha in the Shulchan Aruch, that's where you would go first. So traditionally in yeshiva, when you learn halacha, you start from the Bet Yosef, because the Bet Yosef is really starting from the Torah, from the Mishnah, the Gemara. It's kind of like the cheat, you know.
Shulchan Aruch, it's like a kitzur compared to Beit Yosef.
The Shulchan Aruch was written for ladies, children, and laymen.
Here you have
Rabbi Yosef
for us.
Oh yeah, exactly. Maran shows up over here. What is here? Here. And he summarizes all of this. You don't need all these books anymore. You just come to Bet Yosef, and he has all of that already written out for you. It's an incredible thing. He did it before there was Google, before there was a Bari Lab Responsa project, before there was, he had access. It's an incredible thing.
We invented the internet.
Right, exactly. And Maran wrote the Shulchan Aruch for the average person to be able to learn halacha. He wrote a Shulchan Aruch in 30 volumes. And he wrote it in 30 volumes so that every person can learn Shulchan Aruch every day of the month, and they can finish the whole Shulchan Aruch in 30 days.
Huh. Cool.
In Rabbi Yosef Karo's generation, that's what the woman and the children were able to do.
Wow.
And what happened was that today, even rabbis, we get our smicha on Shulchan Aruch. You have to understand? I mean, this is already the... When they say, oh, a rabbi today is like a rabbi 2,000 years ago. You don't even understand what a rabbi 2,000 years ago looked like. We're studying the book that was written for the children 500 years ago.
So when we learn halacha here with the Talmud and Rambam and everything, we basically do what Beit Yosef does.
Right, and more, a little bit of a lighter version, like a version that flows more. Where Rabbi Yosef Kairo's Beit Yosef is a very academic work. If you're going to paskin halacha, you have to know, is it life-threatening, not life-threatening, is it allowed in pressing situations, is it rabbinic, is it biblical, is it... All of those things, to be a posek, you need to know every single source that ever spoke about something. For us, to follow the halachot, it's enough to know the Gemara, the Rambam, the Shulchan Aruch, a few different opinions. We're not studying as intensely as we would if we were studying Beit Yosef. And to do that, in my opinion, would be a waste of time. Because we don't need to know that much information. We need to know a lot of information, but not that much information. Right now, we're moving we move at a nice pace actually, but it's technically a slow pace. If we were to do Bet Yosef, I'm not lying to you, we would be in the second halacha of the first Siman. After Shivita Hashem and Nagdi Tamid, the second halacha, we would still be there.
So, in the yeshiva, what people study in yeshiva?
In normal yeshivas, just Gemara. They don't study anything. Nothing useful. But in like a smicha yeshiva, like by us, we studied Bet Yosef, almost Shulchan Aruch, the poskim. What we did was, I'll tell you, one year I decided I'm gonna do Bet Yosef. Like seriously, Bet Yosef. Bet Yosef, Shulchan Aruch. I want to do the laws of Shabbat. So I took a study partner, one of my good friends from the Mir. He wanted to learn halachot. I wanted somebody who had a good head, so we made a decision. We'd meet in the old city in the afternoon. And it was interesting for him. He was Ashkenazi, I was Sephardic. We definitely were going to fight when it came to learning the laws of Shabbat. But that was exactly what was exciting about studying the laws of Shabbat together. It was the first time that I ever met people who got offended by saying, oh, Ashkenazim do that and Sephardim do that. Was in San Diego. In Israel, or in a yeshiva, Sephardim, Ashkenazim, people aren't pushovers. They know exactly why their tradition says to do X, Y, and Z. And so there's no reason to apologize for it. You can make fun of it, but they're going to fight you just as hard as... And they know their stuff. And so it was very fun to learn with someone who was so knowledgeable. We learned the laws of cooking on Shabbat. Just one chapter in Shulchan Aruch. And I learned it every day for 6 hours. And it took me 6.5 months back. One chapter of Shulchan Aruch.
One chapter.
That's one Siman.
Yeah, one Siman, yeah.
You're using a whole library of sources to make.
Right, but if we learned that way, we would never finish anything. Harav Peretz made his own Bet Yosef, kind of. What he does is, on the Shulchan Aruch, he'll bring you the Gemarot, all the relevant sources, all the things like that. He doesn't write on this part of Shulchan Aruch. He writes on mostly the things you study to become a rabbi. So like when I learn the laws of Shabbat, or the laws of kosher, things like that, I don't use normal books. I use normally Rabbi Peretz's books, which has all the different opinions inside it.
Well, we've gone through, about 5 chapters in a year.
Right, Baruch Hashem. I told once, I was in Baltimore, and I visited one of my rabbis, Rabbi Telmer. Alav Shalom passed away. So he asked me, what are you studying in yeshiva? And for me it's very intimidating. Like I was already a rabbi, technically. I mean, I was now going for my extra degree in the laws of Nida. And I was single, I was young, and I told him I'm doing the laws of Nida. And he's the kind of guy who no matter what you he can give you a test on Torah anywhere you want. And he was very straight. Rabbi Telmer was, people didn't consider him nice because he was so straight. I appreciated that straightness very much. It was harsh sometimes, but he never lied to you. He threw his own child out of the yeshiva. That was a big, for me, that made me respect him. When you could tell your son, get out of yeshiva, you broke a rule. But I'm your son. It doesn't make a difference. I would throw anybody else out for breaking that rule. I said, but I live on campus. Where am I going to go? Said, figure it out. Now you might say, oh, that's such a Litvish story. But what that means for a boy like me who's in yeshiva is he's a fair person. He has rules, and he demands his family to follow them also. There's no protection, there's no connections, there's no... Rabbi Taylor asked me, so, what are you learning? I said, Nida. I said, oh, where are you in the laws of Nida? I told him which chapter in Shulchan Aruch we're in. I said, oh, I meant which page in the Gemara you're in. I said, we don't study the Gemara when we learn the laws of Nida. We use it as a reference book, but we don't... If we study the laws of Nida from the Gemara, we never finish the laws of Nida. So he told me, I said, so whose books do you study? I said, my rabbi's books. He said, do you know why he was able to write books? I said, why? I said, because he studied from the Gemara. So he was giving me musar that I shouldn't learn that way, I shouldn't take shortcuts. So when I went to Israel, I was like a bumming experience, kind of, for lack of a better word. It put me down. And I told Rabbi Peretz, I don't understand. Are we cheating? Like, are we, cheating the system by using your books? We're working hard all day and night, but maybe we should be doing everything from scratch on our own and finding those books and taking them down from the shelves. And now Peretz looked at me. He was was very upset. He told me, when you go back to Baltimore, you tell that rabbi that to learn the way that I had to learn was bittul Torah. He said it was a waste of Torah learning time. He said because I had to get out of my chair, and I had to pull down books, and I had to learn things that weren't relevant, and I promised myself that when I had students, I wouldn't make them do the things that are bittul Torah. I'm only going to make them learn the things that they have to learn, things that are relevant to them, things that are relevant to their Judaism. He said, and that's why I write these books. So tell the rabbi that if you learn the way he wants you to learn, you're going to be doing an Avera. And that transformed the way that I thought about this.
Rabbi Peretz said that?
Rabbi Peretz said that. He said...
So he was a distiller also?
Yeah, very much so. And he believed that there's no pride in... There's pride in working hard, of course, diligence. But you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If someone already invented the wheel, so use the wheel.
It's difficult because on one hand you have to have a panoramic view and be focused at the same time. And you have to know where to draw from to do it.
So imagine that...
But if you get stuck in one place, it's like you almost never get to where you need to get to.
I'll give you an example. That if you learn today the laws of marriage, you know how to do chuppah, kiddushin. I'm flying to Israel now to do a wedding. I'm going for 3 days and coming back. And 4 days, I don't know. And I think it's okay. I don't think there's anything... it's an obstacle course over here. So, my cleaning, we have 2 different cleaning ladies that we rotate between. Both of them had some terrible tragedy happen to them. They can't come for the next few weeks. You know. So they both chose the same time. I wonder if they're related. So it was open. So Rabbi Peretz wasn't saying don't learn Torah. What he was saying, it's about marriage. If you would learn the laws of marriage from Shulchan Aruch, you wouldn't know how to do a chuppah today in 2015. Because you're lacking the contemporary sources, the books, the things. If you start going back to what happens if you write a ketubah and you make a mistake, and instead of writing her name Razel, you write the name Raisel. It never happened in the last who knows how long. Today most ketubahs come with the names printed inside of them. So it doesn't mean you shouldn't know the halachot at all about how to correct a mistake in the ketubah. But it shouldn't be. The Shulchan Aruch spends many, many, many chapters on this. It's not something that a modern rabbi deals with so much. Because today things are computerized, today things are filled in. In Israel, the chief rabbinate does all this work before you even come. I mean, when a rabbi comes to the chuppah in Israel, I don't like the chief rabbinate, but it's one of the nicest things they do. I walk to a chuppah, and all the paperwork is ready. The witnesses are signed, their social security numbers are there. I mean, it's a government thing. It's an incredible thing. All they leave room for is for the chatan to sign and for the rabbi to sign. That's it. That's all you have to do. The date is filled in. The location is filled in. It's an incredible thing. So all those halachot, yeah, you could spend years and years studying them, but you're really wasting time from learning things that you should be learning in Torah. So that's why we choose to learn in a different fashion than the way other people would want us to learn.
Well, I think maybe what he was trying to tell you, the guy in Baltimore, the rabbi in Baltimore, was that you shouldn't believe just one rabbi, put your faith in one rabbi, you should go to the sources.
Right. So
it doesn't mean you should waste your time.
I know my rabbi in Baltimore. I learned by him for many years.
Say it?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know what to tell him then. Oh, so when I came back already, I'll tell you the truth. Can I have the glass, please? A cup. And the pitcher of water. And by the time I came back to Baltimore, he had already suffered a stroke. Oh, I'll do it. Okay. And thank you very much. Thank you. So when I came back to Baltimore, he already had a stroke, and he was on a breathing machine. And I came to him. I learned by him for 5 years. I came to him and I said hello, and he looked at me. He didn't know who I was, and he asked his daughter to ask me what my name was, and it was a very hard thing for me. And I know someone at this table once had shared that experience with me on his own, right? And it's a hard thing. Someone that you know for so long doesn't recognize you. And I wrote an article about that. that I never forgot his name. And I'd say, they really left a mark on us. But I never had the opportunity to present him with that. But if I knew Rabbi Tendler, he wouldn't have liked the answer. He was very, very sharp in what he believed. Itai, by the way, is studying by his brother. And Doron is studying in the yeshiva that I studied in Baltimore. And that thumbprint that he left is something incredible. You know, he was a big Baal Musa. I don't know when his yahrzeit is. I'm going to apologize to you. But you have a book about him, no?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe you could look up for me when the yahrzeit is. It's in the book
Roman.
somewhere.
Roman
Okay.
Rachel, she's...
She's good at that. He was a big Baal Musa, and he believed very much. He was a very wealthy man. Very wealthy. Anyone here keep Halevy Israel? Eli, you know the company Pride of the Farm?
Yeah.
The milk company? He owned Pride of the Farm. He was the first Halevy Israel.
$1 for every milk carton he bought from me Pride of the Farm.
Pride of the Farm was the only Halevy Israel milk company back in the day.
I heard about this. I talked to the guy that told me the story.
Really? Okay, look at that. So he used to go to Lancaster, Pennsylvania to watch cows be milked. And he didn't keep Halevy Israel. He just decided there were Jews who need it, so I'll be the one to supply that
I
market.
heard it a long time back.
The yeshiva keeps Halevy Israel, not because they believe that they have to,
Be a good deal.
but they get a good deal on the milk, so there's no reason not to. So everything is Halevy Israel. That's the way it works, except for the butter is OUD, which is interesting enough. There's a certain shita that came out of the rabbis in Ashkenaz. Even those who held that the milk has to be Halevy Israel, some held that butter doesn't have to be Halevy Israel. That's an old Litvish opinion. So that was their belief.
I want to just divert you from your focus, but what is it? What constitutes?
I'm so diverted from the focus that
Yeah,
we
I
can
know.
go wherever you want.
What constitutes Halevy Israel?
This is a tough question.
You should have been here last Shavuot.
I gave a class about it last Shavuot.
Oh my God.
To make a long story short, for most
Yeah,
people,
that's what like
they have to watch. A Jew has to watch the cow being milked.
Okay.
According to most people. Today, nobody watches cows being milked.
Yeah.
There's a camera. There's a Jew behind the camera watching a cow being milked.
Yeah.
And for certain people, only the Rebbe himself has to watch that Jew who's doing the
No, there's
Stick it in
a
his office. Little screen.
the Rabbi Tendler had so much money and he lived like a very simple person, not like a poor person, but a very simple person. He lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, and the yeshiva had bigger houses to give him. And he said, "I don't care if I'm the Rosh Yeshiva, but there are people with more children that they should live in bigger houses. I don't need the bigger house." And he was a very humble person. He always drove a used car. Once he got himself a new car, I remember, and he gave it back because it made him feel too egotistical that he was driving a new car. So he would always drive these second-hand. They looked like boats. They were these huge, like old police cars. You
With
can imagine,
fins.
yeah, like they were old cars. And
he
he,
had the searchlight.
Rabbi Tendler was very critical of his students, and you knew that he was going. Like if you were walking down the street, he would pull over to you and say, "Yeshiva boys don't walk with their shirts out of their pants. Tuck it in, or I'm not moving my car." Like things like that. You know that Rabbi Tendler was. That's how it worked. If you're eating a bag of chips in the street, he would stop and say, "Throw it out." You know, a yeshiva boy doesn't walk and eat in the middle of the street. We're not monkeys. Whatever it would be like, he would have all these. And Rabbi Tendler would, on Erev Shabbat, he would go to the grocery store, the farthest one away, from the yeshiva, at the latest time that it was open, so that any boy who didn't have a ride back to the yeshiva, he would give them a ride back to the yeshiva.
Wow.
And he would wait until it was like pretty close to Shabbat. It wasn't. He felt that was his job to make sure every boy got a ride home.
Wow.
And so one of his students, he became a little bit more. He made a little bit of money, and he was a lawyer, or whatever else it was, and he took his wife on vacation to the East Coast, and he wanted to show her the yeshiva. So he had rented a yellow convertible. The roof goes down, and I don't know what kind of weather Baltimore has that even want a convertible, but okay. And they pull into the yeshiva's parking lot, and to his horror, Rabbi Tendler's in the parking lot. And Rabbi Tendler takes one look at him, looks at the car, he looks at his student, and he says, "You should just be careful, because when you drive a car like this, your wife's shaitel might fly off." He always had something to say. If he knew you couldn't hear it, so he said it in a different way. We're on page 119. And we're starting, perhaps, the next most exciting part of the Shulchan Aruch. What is the most exciting part? Because we're doing it. Do you remember all that potty talk that we had back in the beginning?
Yeah.
This part, not necessarily this chapter, but the next chapter, it's going to start getting worse. And then, so 2 chapters, and then we're going to go into the laws of tzitzit, and we're going to mature a little bit.
So now for the smelly stuff.
Siman Vav, the 6th chapter. Din birkat asher yetzar, the blessing of asher yetzar. Ve'elohai neshama, and that blessing of Elohai neshama, u'perushav, and its explanation. Uvo, and inside of this chapter, Daled seifim. There are, how many halachot? 4. Aleph. Says Maran. No, we haven't seen in a while is the Ramah. We're going to see him now, today. Kshiyitzeh mibet hakiseh. When a person leaves the bathroom. Yivarech, he should make a blessing. Asher yetzar, he who created et ha'adam, the human being, b'chokhmah, with wisdom. Shebriat ha'adam, because the creation of man, hi chokhmah nifla, it's really a wise, it's an incredible wisdom. If one would truly understand the body, they would realize how incredible Hashem is. V'yesh mefarshim, some understand it differently. Al shem she'aguf, that the body, domeh lenod male ruach, is like a bag full of wind. V'hu male nekavim, and it is full of holes. Ch'delkaman besamuch, like it says later on, meaning that the body is very wise and that it doesn't just deflate or not everything leaks out all of the time.
They call it a balloon.
A balloon, yeah?
That's what they...
Could be. Node, I don't know what node. I don't know if they had balloons in the times of Maran.
Yeah, it's probably...
They had whatever they would have. Bags, I don't know if they had bags either. But.
They used to call some people windbags back then.
Oh, that's why we say in the Shaar about them.
That was another part of the body.
V'yesh mefarshim, some explain, b'chokhmah, the word with wisdom, that Hashem created man with wisdom. Look how many different explanations. Shehitkin mizonotav, that he first brought to the world the food, shel adam harishon, of the first man, v'achar kach bero, and only afterwards did he create him. Meaning first Hashem created the things which a person needed in the world, and then he created man.
Such a kindness.
Right, it was a chesed. In chokhmah, wisdom it's a chesed that Hashem did for us.
That's true.
Hashem was wise in not first creating us, oh, well, what am I going to do? I don't have food for them. Somebody was telling me that we should teach homeless people how to grow their own vegetables. That way they'll be able to, they'll be able to...
Bob Dylan said to give people large plots of land and shelters and have them be self-sufficient.
So I was just telling them that by the time they grow their tomato, they're going to be dead from hunger.
Well, they told them.
It has to be, obviously you want to do such a thing and build a collective farming land. It's a different story. But there is Hashem put in first man's needs before he created him. Uvara bo nekavim, and the blessing continues, and he...
He's not talking about homeless people.
No, I was just saying a thought. Ubara bo nekavim, he created in him holes and holes. Chalulim,
orifices.
a nekev is a hole. Chalulim are like, that could be an orifice, a hollows, many hollows.
Yeah, because we think of orifices like a mouth or ear canal, but that's...
The literal
not thinking of
definition
that.
of nikavim are holes. And that is what he's referring to. Perusha, the explanation of this part of the blessing, nikavim rabim, many holes, kagon peh, like the mouth. Vachotam, in the nose. Ufi tabat, and the mouth of the ring, which we mentioned is where a person goes to the bathroom from, down below. V'gam barabo, and he created in him evarim rabim chalulim, many organs which are hollow. Kagon lev, like the heart, v'keres u'ma'ayim, and the stomach and the intestines.
He considers the heart to be hollow.
I guess he's referring to maybe the ventricles, the chambers, the fact that they're not just full organs. They're she'im yisatem echad mehem, that the blessing continues, that if one of them will be closed, kromar, meaning shebanekavim yesh nekev echad shu hapeh, that in all of these holes there's one like the mouth. Shikshu b'me'ei imod, that when the mouth is inside of his mother's womb, hu satum, that mouth is closed. Uchshiyotze la'avir ha'olam, page 120, and when the baby comes out to the air of the world, hu niftach, the mouth is opened. V'im kshiyotze la'avir ha'olam, and if the baby would have been brought out to the air of the world, Hayanishal satum, God forbid his mouth was closed, Lo haya efshar litkayem afilu sha'a achat, he would not be able to exist for even one moment. He wouldn't be able to breathe properly, he wouldn't be able to eat properly, he wouldn't be able to anything. It goes the other way around too. You can imagine that inside of the mother, if you would take a baby and put him right back into his mother, he would suffocate. I mean, he no longer has the ability to not breathe. It's something to think. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a body with much wisdom to it. Ve'evarim achalulim, and those hollow organs, im haya niftach echad mehem, if one of them would, God forbid, open, lo haya efshar litkayem afilu sha'a achat, he would not be able to last for even one moment. You might know that in modern Hebrew, sha'a means an hour. Ma sha'a, what is the time? Yeah. But sha'a, when you use it as a measurement of time, is an hour. In halachic Hebrew, sha'a means a moment. It doesn't refer to a long period of time like an hour. And it could refer to, like when you say, you could use sha'a to refer to an hour. But because in halakha, sha'a, an hour is never 60 minutes of an hour. It's sometimes 30 minutes, sometimes 70 minutes, depending on what season it is, when the sun rises, when the sun sets. The word sha'a just means any given moment of time.
Halachic time is more fluid than digital time.
Right. ועוד יש לפרש, some want to explain. What does this mean? I need your help with the English.
Need help with the English.
שגבול יש לאדם, there's a limit to a person, שיכולים נקביו להיסתם ולא ימות. There's a limit to how long his body part can be closed and he won't die. וכיוון שעבר אותו הגבול, and once that moment passes, אי אפשר להתקיים אפילו שעה אחת. He's no longer able to last for even 1 minute. This is a 121. So now, Rabbi Yosef Karo is dealing with the question. What in the world does this blessing have to do with going to the bathroom?
Well, first, you're talking about the miracles of the body.
But what does that have to do with the bathroom? That's what he's asking. Well, obviously, the answer to that
Because
is...
your body is working and you're able to relieve yourself.
Constipation's no fun.
Oh, so here's what we're going to say. V'kivan shebichlal nekavim, that included in these holes that we were referring to. Hem pi hatabat to pi ha'ama, they're both the ways that a person relieves himself. Uvichlal ha'evarim ha'chalulim, and included in the hollow organs. Shimi patach echad mehem, that if one of them were to open, efshar litkayem, he would not be able to survive. Hem keres u'ma'ayim, that is his stomach and his intestines. Somebody would open his belly, he would not survive that for so long. Shapir havi shevach zeh, it is proper for this shevach, for this praise, minyan asiyat tzorchav, that it should be connected to the using of the bathroom.
That's an odd explanation.
What do you mean?
I mean, he's drawing the particular from the general by mentioning the stomach and the intestines, but the bracha is not referring to the stomach and the intestines. It's
referring to all the
whole thing.
organs.
Yeah.
We're saying that perhaps this is the one time that our body, imagine if a person, like he says, is constipated, they cannot go to the bathroom, or clearly they cannot urinate, or they or the other way, they can never stop, or their stomach, it opened, God forbid, or something happened inside, or whatever it would be. All of those things, the fact that it works properly, we have to say thank you to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that everything works properly. So that's why our rabbis instituted this blessing connected to the bathroom. I think it's not a blessing on the bathroom. It's a blessing of thanks, of shevach, of praise, after we use the bathroom.
It's a different focus than what most people would normally think.
Right. Well, he has a different answer he's going to give. If Shaar od, there could be another approach to this. Shemachar sheim yotzeren kavav, biyoter. The translation here is going to be funny for me. Ad sheim avar gvul yamut. Can you help me out over here?
I'm trying to figure out where you are in this. It says, and furthermore, if one makes his needs more than needed and passes the limit, he will
Right.
die. Therefore, even the limbs like the heart and the intestines, whatever, relate.
It's a sign here he's at where it talks about he will die.
Yeah.
If he passes.
I understand what he's saying, it just didn't make sense to me, but you could help me out with this. Shemachar sheim yotzeren kavav, because once a person goes to the bathroom, biyoter, too much. Ad sheim avar gvul yamut, he's going to go to the bathroom so much that he could actually die from it. Is there such a thing?
Yeah. If he okay, so if one makes his needs more than needed and passes the limit, he will die.
Oh, okay, that's saying like
Therefore,
you can, if you have like, for
A person,
example,
not me,
loose stool.
somebody else.
Like cholera.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not.
So
you.
someone,
You.
yeah.
If someone has, constant loose stool, they will dehydrate.
yeah.
Okay, this is what he's saying.
He's looking at the relationship between the more internal organs and the openings to the outside here.
Interesting.
He translated cannular limbs, which
Yeah.
I've never seen before.
I never heard that
That
word
means
before.
essential organs and their relationship to the openings.
Open.
It's-
Okay.
This is,
Like stomach flu. It's a horrible thing.
Okay. So bichlal sheim
the
yipatach chad
opposite
meimu.
he's saying the opposite is the same as if it's blocked. If it's not held back enough, it also is.
It also is a
It
bad.
could also be.
So he's saying this is included in, and if one of them were to open, right? We say this is also part of it. Avi sheim yipatach chad mehem nami minyan asiyat tzorchav mamash. That part of the blessing is literally referring to going to the bathroom. Rofeh kol basar, and you see that there's a note here from the Ramah. Rofeh choli kol basar. I've never seen Ashkenazim say this blessing. Rofeh choli kol basar mafil lasot.
Oh,
Rofeh chol basar mafil lasot. How do you say it?
Yeah, that's in there.
Yeah.
You've never heard Ashkenazim say that?
Yeah.
No, I've never heard Ashkenazim say Rofeh choli kol basar. That part. The Ramah adds it in. You see it in the parentheses.
So
Yeah,
we say at the end,
It's in the Chabad Siddur.
Baruch atah Hashem, Rafei kol basar mafil yasot.
We say Rofeh kol basar. Right, mafil lasot. The question is there anyone who says Rofeh choli kol basar? That word choli.
Holy.
The Ramah adds it in as the nusach, but
Instead
I've
of
never
kol
seen
rein.
Ashkenazim say that part. It literally means, I'll tell you, Rofeh kol basar means he who heals all flesh.
Yeah.
Rofeh choli kol basar means he who heals all disease of the flesh. Or sickness of the flesh. Hashem hanikavim shebarabo, regardless of the nusach, this is regarding the holes that Hashem created in the body, laotzi psolet mochlo, to remove the waste from the food. Ki mitapesh bebeten yamut, if it stays inside of the stomach and rots there, he will die. V'hatzato, and the leaving of the body, hi refuah, is a sort of healing for the body.
Yes.
Umafli lasot, and he who does with wonder. Mipnei sha'adam domeh lenod malei ruach, because the person is like that bag full of air, the balloon full of air, whatever you want to call it. Vim yaseh adam banod nekev, if a person makes a hole inside of that balloon, kechudash machat, as thin as a needle. That's like someone from Chelm would do such a thing. I'm just going to make a little hole inside of it. Haruach yotzeh, the wind would come out.
It's actually, that is traditional medical wisdom, big time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
V'adam maleh nekavim
No,
on a balloon?
no, if you,
Okay.
when you make a hole in the body, like when you, like God forbid, if someone needs surgery, you literally do change permanently the inside of the body by doing it.
Right.
And then it's, we say it in Chinese medicine that wind or cold can enter in there and become lodged deep inside.
So he's using the analogy of the balloon. I was just referring to the popping of a balloon.
Well, it was the idea of earth, water, fire, and air, that one of the elements is wind.
Wind.
Like ruach, like, or you could
Right.
say,
And, you're going to see, but you're going to see, Ramah is going to mention what you're saying. Haruach yotzeh, the wind is all going to leave from inside of this balloon. V'adam maleh nekavim, the person is full of holes. V'rucho, and the wind inside of him, mishtameret b'tocho, stays inside of him. Harei ze pele, this is a miracle. V'od yesh lefaresh, and there's another way to explain this. Hashem sheborer tov hamachal v'doche apsolet. Simply that the body is wondrous and that it knows how to take the good from the food and get rid of the bad from the food.
Does he talk at all about good wind and bad wind? Because there's good aspects to wind and science.
Not that I'm familiar with
Just
the
like
Shulchan Aruch.
there's like with food, there's good aspects of food that nourish you, and there's bad foods that can poison you.
The Rambam speaks about things like this, but
Poison what?
I haven't seen Maran speak about this. Haga. So here comes the Ramah. Rabbi Moshe Israelish. V'od yesh lefaresh. There's another way to explain all of this. Look how many different explanations. I wonder, we haven't seen such a thing in Shulchan Aruch until now. Numerous explanations.
Like where this blessing itself comes from.
From the rabbis.
I mean, from a Talmud.
Yeah.
So, as it is here, it already existed in
the Talmud.
Talmudic.
Yeah.
Right. Now he's just explaining to you what each part of that blessing means. If you think about the blessing, it's kind of a funny, like jumping around kind of blessing. So he's explaining to you all the different elements of it. V'od yesh lefaresh. There's another way to explain it. Shemafli la'asot, he's wondrous in what he does, Hashem. B'ma shomer ruach ha'adam kirbo. With that which he keeps the spirit of a person inside of him. V'kosher davar ruchani b'davar gashmi. And Hashem is able to bind something spiritual to something physical. V'akol hu alidei shehu rofeh kol basar. And this is because Hashem is the healer of all flesh. And you see, it must be that the Ramah didn't add that word above, because he says here rofeh kol basar. Do you see that? He doesn't say rofeh choli kol basar. Interesting. Ki az ha'adam b'kav ha'briut v'nishmato mishtameret b'kirbo. Because then a person, if they're healthy, their neshama will stay inside of their being. The Rambam talks a lot about this, that there's a direct correlation to a person's spiritual well-being and to their physical well-being. Technically, the Rambam suggests a very fanatical theory. He doesn't believe it's a theory, he perhaps suggests that this is the way people lived so long with Tanakh. That if a person, the Rambam writes about this in Laws of Tshuva, that a person is only ill or sick or something because of something that he needs to do tshuva for. Something he needs to realign inside of his body. Inside of his neshama. and his body will memela realign itself because of it. The Rambam technically suggests that a person who's able to constantly do that and stay on top of himself could live forever. That a person doesn't necessarily have to die. It's a matter of how spiritually and physically aligned are they with themselves. Through the Torah, obviously. It's something interesting to think about. It's
So how much control do people have over that? Because the idea is that everyone has their lifespan sort of decided upon.
well, again, the Rambam is not so much from the camp of things being pre-decided in general. And the Rambam is it's a different kind of Judaism in general. It's a little bit more empowering. With the empowering comes a lot of responsibility that some people don't want, which is why they choose a less empowering version. But the Rambam writes this in the laws of Tshuva because he's suggesting that if a person realized how important Tshuva was not just for Hashem, but for their physical well-being, they wouldn't even hesitate to do Tshuva. That was what the Rambam was saying. And you probably have seen this in your own lives.
You see
Something's
people who are
going.
bitter, they won't let go of it, they're still angry at somebody from 20 years ago in their family, their health goes down.
Sure.
We just see this all the time.
There are people who suffer all kinds of diseases because of stress, because of things that, like you said, they're not willing to let go of, they don't want to go past. And people can really hurt themselves. And it's something that not everything in the world we have a choice over, but Hashem gives us a fair amount of control over ourselves. Alright, this is the first seif in this halakha.
I never really understood the bracha until now. It's wonderful to understand that.
The way they describe the Ramah's comment here is that quote, it's also possible to explain, saying, the reason for saying the bracha, that it amazes to do what protects the spirit of man internally and connects spiritual matters to physical matters. And this is all due to the fact that God is the healer of all things, and so man is put on a path of health and his spirit is preserved internally.
It also raises the lower functions that we just take for, even that is connected to a higher purpose. A proper elimination, etc. It is all connected to this whole process of which is wondrous and connects spirit to body and so forth. And if you put that in perspective of that, it changes your whole relationship to your body, even in terms of its needs.
Very interesting. Okay, Birkat Asher Yatzah, that's why we say it. With kavanah, don't just mumble it when you come out of the bathroom. Now let's get into some details. The bottom of 119, we're in Halakha Bura. B'Birkat Asher Yatzar, in the blessing of Asher Yatzar, Yesh Omrim, some say, She'im yipateach echad mehem, O yisatem echad mehem, v'chein minhag Ashkenazim. And that is the custom of the Ashkenazim. Ulam bad minhag Sfaradim ve'etot HaMizrach, the custom of the Sfaradim and the Jews of the East, lomar, to say, She'im yisatem echad mehem, O im yipateach echad mehem. We just turn the order around. The reason is an argument between the rabbis as to what the blessing originally was. The first nusach of the Ashkenazim, if you look on the bottom in the Shaar Tzion, there's a little aleph. Ken girsat bal halachot gdolot. The Bahag, which is a big Rishon, he says you should say like the Ashkenazim. V'Rav Amram Gaon, and the famous Rav Amram, the Gaon, in his Sidur, V'Arif, V'Rashi, V'Harosh, and it's in the Psikta that way. And what about our nusach, the Sfaradim? This is something interesting. Ken Girsat HaRambam. That's the version of the Rambam. We always know that Sfaradim in general will fight many people in the world to follow the versions of the Rambam. It's a classic case. There are many rabbis against this nusach, but we chose the Rambam. Rabbi David Abudraham, V'chen nira dat Maran Shulchan Aruch kan, and it seems that you could read Maran, and that's what he's trying to say here also. V'chen katav b'sidur HaGaon Rabbeinu Zalman Baal HaTanya. In the Sidur of Rabbeinu Zalman, the author of the Tanya, he writes also this nusach. Does Chabad do it that way also? They first say Yisatem, and then Yipatech. Do you remember by heart? No, okay. We should look it up, because he claims that in the original Chabad Siddur, it's like the Rambam, not like the Ashkenazi Siddur. I believe it. I don't remember.
So the difference is what between the Ashkenazim?
Practically now, Ashkenazim say if one of them should open and if one of them should close. The Sfaradim say if one of them should close or if one of them should open. And because of that, we wrote books.
Chabad Siddur is close to
So in Talmud there is no exactly.
Is what?
Spanic.
Right. So it could be that it's not always though. So that's why I'm asking if it's accurate.
So
Okay,
what
then.
about Talmud? There is no exact bracha like that in Talmud?
Oh, we'll continue. We're not done. B'Sefer Yafel Alev, Rabbi Palaji writes about it over there. Also, he says that way. V'Kaf HaChaim, Rabbi Chaim Sofer says that way. U'B'Sefer Ma'asaf Kol HaMachanot, V'chen B'Sefer Eshel Avraham MiBuchach, the Rebbe of Buchach, Shekatav, he writes, if you turn to the next page, Ken B'Shem Bal Kedushat Levi, he writes it in the name of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev. V'Siyem, but he finishes off, She'en Kpeda B'Zeklal, that it doesn't make a difference which way you say it. Close, open, close, just say it. Here's the deal with the Gemara. Probably the Gemara doesn't have a full nusach. The Gemara very often will say, you make an asher yatzar, etc. And it doesn't tell you the whole nusach. Even if the Gemara would tell you the whole nusach, not always is the whole nusach in the Gemara accurate. Sometimes it used to say, etc. And someone else, when they were printing the Talmud, why don't we just, expand it a little bit and add in a blessing here. You'll find that when the Talmud is printed in Vilna, like our Talmud today, they did do such things. They added things from the Ashkenazi Nusach into the Talmud, and they're not accurately part of the Talmud. Like that
So it's
blessing.
not in the Mishnah. It's mentioned in Gemara.
Well, I don't know if it's not mentioned in the Mishnah. I have to look the earliest source for Shagatzah. Alright, V'yesh Omrim. We're already on page 120. In the middle of the page, 120. V'yesh Omrim, some say,
We're doing Brura now. Halacha Brura.
this is a nice halacha. ויש אומרים אי אפשר להתקיים, some say אי אפשר להתקיים, בחיריק תחת האלף, with an E under the aleph. ויש אומרים אי אפשר להתקיים, בצרה תחת האלף. You hear the difference? אי אפשר, אי אפשר. Or Ashkenazim would say אי אפשר. ולהלכה נראה, and according to halacha it appears, שאין הכרע בדבר. There's no right or wrong in this halacha. והרוצה יאמר א' בחיריק, והרוצה יאמר א' בצירה. If someone wants to say חיריק, wants to say צירה, it doesn't make a difference. Either way, it's okay. It seems to me the Sfaradim say אי אפשר, and the Ashkenazim say אי אפשר. That's what it seems to me.
In the Safras it says A.
Yeah, very interesting. I had a siddur here from Morocco. Not from Morocco, it's from Ashkelon or something.
So what is the difference? I mean, I know what you're saying.
Just a little detail. What does it mean anything different? It doesn't mean anything different.
You mean just pronunciation?
The pronunciation of Hebrew words are very important. We today, you read it this way, you read it that way, it doesn't make a difference. But we had rabbis who spent their whole lives fighting with each other because of Hebrew grammar. If we believe that God gave us a language, we have to believe that the language is a divine language. If it's a divine language, then the details of it are important. So here it says Efsha. Could be the Syrians have a tradition to say Efsha. Alright. Let's see a little bit more. ומנהג הספרדים ועדות המזרח, כלומר, and the custom of the Sfaradim and the עדות המזרח is to say, אי אפשר להתקיים אפילו שעה אחת. I'm not able to exist even for one moment.
We said 1 minute.
1 minute, 1 moment. ויש מאשכנזים, and some Ashkenazim שאינם נוהגים לומר, that don't have a custom to say אפילו שעה אחת. And you'll notice that in the Ashkenazi Sidurim, very often it's in parentheses. Because not all Ashkenazim have that custom.
What is talking about? Custom?
The pronunciation.
No.
You know, there's an argument here, and it seems like the Rambam, and the Arizal, and Maran, and the Tur, they all say afilu shaychat, even for without a moment. There's a rabbi called the Tashbatz, was one of the Rishonim, and he wrote to students of the Maharam of Ranenburg, and he said, you shouldn't say afilu shaychat, that you can't close your mouth even for 1 moment, or else a person won't survive. Why? Because people close their mouth all day long and they survive. So what do you mean? Vuvam Bet Yosef, and Maran and the Bet Yosef brings us down. And our rabbis say both of those versions are accurate. So why are there rabbis who are against this version of even for 1 moment I can't close my mouth?
The importance of the order of the letters.
No, because there are people, it says that even if I close my mouth, I cannot survive even for 1 moment. So these rabbis say, don't say even for 1 moment. Why? Because there are people who close them, all of your mouths are closed. But you're alive. Oh Hashem. So why? Why are you alive?
You breathe through
Meaning
your
it's not
nose.
true to say that if my mouth is closed even for a moment I wouldn't survive. That's why these rabbis argue with the Nusach of the Rambam and the Arizal and the Shulchan Aruch. But what can we do? We have the Nusach of the Rambam and the Arizal. And Shulchan Aruch.
But it doesn't say if my mouth was closed for a minute. It says openings, orifices.
Shim Saten Echad Mehem.
It doesn't say if the peh was closed for a moment.
Right, so it's saying Echad Mehem, even one of them. But even one of them includes your mouth. They're just saying, don't say how long it takes for a person to die right away from such a thing. Just say, I wouldn't be able to survive if it was closed. If even one of them was closed. Don't say for how long. The rabbis are afraid of saying something not accurate. Uvachatimat habarchan, when we end the blessing, we say, Yesh Omrim, some say, Rofeh choli kol basar. He who heals the flesh, the sick, the illness in the flesh of man. V'yesh omrim rofeh chol basar u'maflid asot, and some say without the word choli. V'chen minhag Yisrael, this is the custom of all the Jews around the world. Okay, we have a few minutes. We'll just do the next halakha, 121. Maran and Siman Bet. You see Maran on top of the 2 lines?
Very much. Oh.
The middle, the 3/4.
I see we're a little bit smart like Bowman.
Yeah.
That was a lot to absorb, actually.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem. It's good stuff, hard stuff, deep stuff. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was one of the greatest tzaddikim who ever lived. It's not for nothing that we sing about him all the time, we talk about him all the time. In my house, we don't do Kiddush until we sing Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon is our... In my grandfather's synagogue, by the Yemenite community, they auction off to the singing of Bar Yochai. They sing it before the end of Tefillah, and the highest bidder gets to sing the song of Bar Yochai for the community. It's a big deal. Bar Yochai, Rabbi Shimon, it's not a simple thing. Rabbi Shimon was Hashem's gift to the Jewish people. He brought with him the Torah Sod, the world of Kabbalah, the Zohar, his students, his son. Can you imagine a person could say that all this world needs is myself and my son? Us alone, we could hold up the whole world. It's an incredible thing. Rabbi Shimon, as it says, Kadosh Mehirayon, he was holy already when he was conceived. He was a holy person. And Rabbi Shimon suffered in his life. He was persecuted by the Romans. Why was he persecuted by the Romans? Do you remember? I'm going to share some of this tomorrow. By the
Wasn't really ready to come out.
tomorrow there's a Lag Bomer event here in our house. It's free. If you want to bring a drink or some fruits or refreshments, you're more than welcome. Part at 7 o'clock tomorrow.
Matches, torches.
Yeah, we're not doing a big fire. We have what we have in our yard. But please come and you might need to bring a folding chair, but we'll see how many chairs we have. We look forward to just being together, to sing together, to learn together, like a spiritual experience. It's not about the potatoes. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was sitting with these two rabbis who were praising the Romans. One rabbi praised the Romans. He said, look, they build such nice marketplaces, and they build such nice roads and freeways, and bathhouses, whatever else he was saying. And the Romans, who were the Romans? They were the occupiers of the land of Israel. They just destroyed Abed Mikdash. And one of the rabbis was quiet. He didn't say anything. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was never two-faced. He stood up and he said, everything the Romans did, they only did for themselves. You think they did it for us? You think they want us to have nice roads? You think they care about the Jewish people? They just do it for themselves. Stop praising them. And the Romans put out a decree, he who praised the Romans should be uplifted. He who was quiet should be exiled. And he who spoke about us should be put to death. Rabbi Shimon had to run for his life, and he ran to a cave with his son, Rabbi Elazar. You know the story. The cave wasn't what you would think a cave, walking in and out of the cave. He didn't have clothes, he didn't have anything.
It wasn't air conditioned.
So what he would do is he would bury himself in the dirt so that he could learn. His father-in-law would come visit him. Dirt. And so his skin was being eaten by the bugs that were inside of the dirt. 12 years he was there, right? Yeah, not good with numbers. And finally, he gets a message, he can come out. And the famous story of what happens is that he sees somebody dealing with a farming, mundane work. And Rabbi Shimon burns him up with his eyes. What did he burn him up with his eyes? Was I thought about that before? What is it, a Superman movie? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, we're not understanding who Rabbi Shimon was. He was the kind of person who had the kochot, the spiritual capabilities, to burn somebody with his eyes. It's a person who didn't live in this world, who was so above, beyond. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu screams out from heaven. A voice comes from heaven and says, Yatzata la'achriv et olami, you came out of the cave to destroy my world? Go back into the cave. And he went in for 13 more months. And Rabbi Shimon comes out of the cave a changed person. And what's the first thing he does? Do you know the first thing Rabbi Shimon does when he comes out of the cave? He doesn't go to Meron and light a bonfire. What does he do?
Find the farmer? Hug the
He
farmer?
found out that on one of the roads, there were many Kohanim that they needed to travel on this road because it was a shortcut, but they couldn't travel on the road because rumor was that there used to be a cemetery and there were bones inside of the earth. And it was tameh and they weren't able to travel there. And it was a big schlep for them to go all the way around. And Rabbi Shimon got down on his hands and knees and started digging and digging and digging. he collected all the bones and he moved them to a cemetery on the side of the road. So Rabbi Shimon realized that being a Torah scholar who wants to burn the whole world, Hashem doesn't need Torah scholars like that. There are rabbis that like to condemn to hell. They like to tell people how bad they are. Their whole life they're telling people how worthless they are. And Hashem says, I didn't take you out of a cave so you should destroy my world. You need to go back to your cave. If that's what they taught you in your little yeshiva somewhere, then go back to the cave. We don't need you in this world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is very protective of his world, of his people. He says, don't come out and start burning people with your eyes. Rabbi Shimon comes out a second time and he realized, my job as a Talmid Chacham is to do things like clearing the road, clearing the bones, clearing a path for people. It's a service to the community. It's a service to people. And very often, somebody spoke to me today about Torah scholars, Talmidei Chachamim. They had just borrowed from me a work from Rabbi Soloveitchik, the lonely man of faith. And they asked me what the hardest part of being a rabbi is. That's like asking,
Yeah.
what's the hardest part?
Come back in 50 years.
I told them, it's the immense loneliness. Not from not having friends, but from lacking colleagues who believe in the same message you believe in. There are so many rabbis that are out to burn the world. If it's to burn people with their eyes because they don't keep Shabbat, if it's to burn people's wallets because all they think about is money, if it's to do corrupt things and be caught about it in other places, Hashem said, I didn't create people so they should come to this world and in my name they should destroy the whole world. And I'm not in the worlds of the Gdolim, but to find a quiet place in the world where there are Torah scholars who just want to be like Rabbi Shimon. Our job is not to put ourselves on a pedestal and to look down at everybody else and to tell other people how not holy they are. Our job is to get down on our hands and knees and to say, this road is now okay for you to walk on. The metaphor, this halakha is okay for you to follow. This approach is also valid. This road, this path, this journey you're going on in your life is also a valid journey.
Like Yitzhak digging wells.
Right. It's a preparation for the world. It's a public service. But there's a depth to all of these things. Like Yitzhak digging wells and water, and there's a lot of depth to what he was doing there. But I see this. How many rabbis today close off roads and close off paths and say there's only one path. There's only one road. There's only one rabbi.
They can't close because fire department.
There's only one approach to Judaism and it's my approach. They never tell you there's only one approach and it's his approach. You never heard such a thing. And I stop and I say, how many people are going to be like that before we find rabbis who are willing to clear paths and say this one is checked and it's also good for you. It's not good for him, but it's good for you. And that path that he's on is not good for you. And if you would go down that path and you would put on your white shirt and tzitzit out of your pants, you will, in 10 years from now, hate yourself. And you, if you don't go down that road, in a year you'll hate yourself. And for a person to know that there are many different roads, there are many different valid options in the Jewish community. Rabbi Shimon wasn't a small person. He made that mistake once. And he was taught by Kadosh Baruch Hu himself not to make that mistake again. Lag BaOmer, we have to tell people, there's a reason why Rabbi Akiva's students passed away. And the foundation, that the principle of that story was because they were not able to respect that there